तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ओम शांति
अयनेषु च सर्वेषु यथा भागमवस्थिताः भीष्ममेवाभिरक्षन्तु भवन्तः सर्व एव हि तस्य सञ्जनयन् हर्षम् गुरुवृद्धपितामहः सिंहनादं विनद्योच्चैः शङ्खं दद्मौ प्रतापवान् ततः शङ्खाश्च भैर्यश्च पणवानकगोमुखाः सहसैवाभ्यहन्यन्तः सशब्दस्तुमुलोऽभवत् ततश्वेतैर्भयैर्युक्ते महति स्यन्दने स्थितौ माधवः पाण्डवश्चैव दिव्यौ शङ्कौ प्रभस्मतुः पाञ्चजन्यं ऋषिकेशः देवदत्तं धनञ्जयः पाण्डौ दद्मौ महाशङ्कम् भीमकर्मावृतोदरः।
The third topic says the conches were blown. The war is going to start, and verses 12 to 19 is a description of the tumultuous sound the conches creates. And he gives a description of the names of the conches, who's blowing, what, and what is the reaction that it produces to Duryodhana's heart. So, the conches is an indication that they are ready to fight. They are ready to fight. And if you have to fight, you have to whip yourself into a frenzy. Then only you can start a fight. Otherwise you cannot fight. That's what the sounds does. They create a frenzy. Then only you can get into a fight. Under normal circumstances, you cannot fight. So you have to whip yourself into a frenzy. Even normally, when you get angry, scream and shout. If you have not at that point of time, you can't observe later. You would have slowly built it by that frenzy. You will build it by yourself, and then it reaches a peak, it reaches a climax, and you start blowing out. Yeah, and you blow out. So the conches represent how you have to whip yourself into a frenzy to begin a war, to begin a fight. Fight indicates a wrong type of effort for achieving the end. That is fight. That's where nobody gets anything through. Fight indicates a wrong type of effort to achieve an end, whatever you want. And most of the time we don't get what we want is because we are using the wrong means. And the wrong means is fight. Wrong means is to, since we don't know anything else apart from fighting, we think that's the right way, and we go on fighting. More you fight, more you lose. So more you fight, more you lose. Nobody has won anything by fight. You win only by giving up, not by fighting. The day you decide to give up fight, what do you give up? You give up that frenzy to fight. Why that fight is very, very interesting. Why everyone wants to fight is because in fight the ego finds an fulfillment that it has done something. In fight the ego finds a fulfillment that it has done something, so that you can always save it, so that you can always have a pride towards, so that you can always have a pride and say it is because of my hard effort. You can't say just effort, because just effort looks there is no pride in just effort. You have to say hard effort. You can't say earned money. You have to say hard earned money. You have to use the word. You have to use the word hard, and in that hard, you find the ego finds the pride. Ego finds the pride. Ego by nature is violent. Ego by nature is violent, and anything that comes out of ego will be a war. This is the psychology of war. Ego by nature is violent. There is no calm ego. Please, either there is a tamasic ego, sleeping ego, or an agitated ego. There is no sattvic ego. There is no calm ego and all. Either it is sleeping, tamasic, or agitated, disturbed. Correct? How can there be a calm? Calmness means absence of ego. Calmness is absence of ego makes you calm. Absence of ego makes you relaxed. The presence of ego is tense, violence. The presence of ego is always tensed. It's always a tension. What is the tension? Will I get? Am I doing the right thing? Will I get? Am I in the right? So ego has to live in. The ego survives in tension. It has to live in tensed. Or the only relaxation is what? Actually, there is no relaxation at all. The only relaxation that people experience is the relaxation of inaction. What is rest? What is rest? Sunday is rest, sir. What is rest? Inaction. That's all. The only a type of useless action. It's a type of, it's an action, but it is useless in nature. Instead of calling it as an useless action, you call it as rest. Sunday we take rest. We don't do anything. Monday to Friday or Monday to Saturday do hard work. It's a fight. It's a war. It's a war. Because the nature of ego is violence. And whatever comes out of ego has to be violent. Violence is, war signifies violence. War always signifies violence. There is no peaceful war, isn't it? War means violent. And what is the war? Visualize the war. Someone hand is cut. Someone legs are cut. One man is 40% dead. Another man is 70% dead. Screaming and crying in agony, pain, just wanting to survive. A wise man sees life like that, because everyone is doing the same thing. Everyone is in a kind of war, because there is always a fight for survival. 40%, one hand is cut, one leg is cut, one hand is cut, one leg is cut. Now what does it mean? Physically handicapped. One leg is cut, one hand is cut, one finger goes, sometimes one eye goes. What does it mean? All that you claim as yours will be taken away in front of your eyes. And that's the pain. That's the violence. What is the violence? What is the violence? All that you claim as yours will be taken away right in front of your eyes, and you will be helplessly watching it. That's the violence. That's the war. That's the fight. And the only way the ego enjoys is what? That's where all our entertainment is also a violent. Belittling other, putting down. Even the jokes is what? What is the joke? You have to put down somebody, either verbally or physically. One man gets beaten up by 20 fellows. That is everything associated with the ego will necessarily be violent. Necessarily it has to be violent. It cannot avoid violence. Just as there is no calm, peaceful ego. There is no calm, peaceful ego. Calm, peaceful ego, no, it's sleeping. Because ego means it is violence. In violence, what happens? You lose yourself. In violence, you lose yourself. You lose yourself, you regret, again you lose yourself, you regret, again you lose yourself, you regret. This vicious cycle goes on. You do something, you do an action, you regret. Again you do the same action. Again you regret. Again you do the same action. It's the nature of the war. And that war is about to begin now. Yeah. So much of preparation for war, isn't it? So much of preparation for war. And in Ramayana also, the Yuddha Kanda is the biggest. You know that, no? Sundarakanda is so small. Yuddhakanda is huge. Mahabharata also. You live a life of 70, 80, 90, 100 years in violence, in fight, in war. The peaceful moments are very less. Or even the peaceful moments that you experience is not actually peace. It's a hallucination. It's a delusion that you are in peace, because the seeds of violence is still there. All that is needed is what? Just little bit of fanning is required, little bit of nourishment, little bit of water. What is the tree? Just that one drop of water you put, it becomes so huge and touches the heaven, no? There is the tree in the mythology. There is a seed. See, normal seed you put for the tree to come, dates. Maybe only your grandson will see the fruit. You will not see the fruit. Here is the seed. You have. You pour water. What happens? In a few seconds, it grows so fast and it touches the heaven. The seed of violence is there. The seed of attachment is there, deep inside. Just little bit of nourishment, just little bit of watering is all that is required. What does nourishment means? What does nourishment means? Just one thing not going your way. One thing not going your way. One man not listening to you. That's all. Yeah. That's all. That's all it takes to bring the entire violent nature out. After a while it subsides. The cycle. In this fight, in this war, what is the end result? What is the result of war? Total loss. That's where, in the very first class when we started this war, I keep on saying, in a war there is no victor or loser. Everybody loses. That's where the wise one never gets into a battle. He says, because you want to lose nothing, you will get into a war. But loss is also okay, sir. But I want to give back nicely. Yeah, I want to give back. Even if I get 1 or 2 in return also, it is no problem. No problem. But I must give. I must give. The love is so violent. There is no love at all. Even the love that people have is so violent in nature. There is no love at all. She was saying, that girl, I am running behind that person so much, and he goes on belittling, ignoring, avoiding. You know, sir, one day I must make that man come behind me. Then only he will understand the pain. And she is saying, I am in love with that. And she is saying, I am in love with that person. This is what? This is violence. This is violence. That's where there is no love. There is only violence. What is violence? Somehow I must get what I want. Somehow I must get what I want. makes you say things, makes you do things, makes you think, entertain thoughts, which comes back and destroys you. Comes back and destroys, like a vicious cycle. It starts from you, goes everywhere without affecting anybody, gathering momentum, comes back only to destroy you. That's where in violence, in attachment, please understand, in violence, in attachment, you harm yourself, you hurt yourself, and you suffocate the other. You don't harm the other, you don't hurt the other, you only harm you do to yourself, suffocation you give to the other. That's where out of your attachment you suffer. Other man runs away from you and says, Abbara, I am free. I am free from that man. Attachment harms. Out of attachment I am hurting everybody, sir. Therefore I don't want to get attached. Please don't give a moral coloring to it. Out of attachment, if you are attached, you alone will suffer. But the other gets, what happens to the other? The other gets suffocated. Out of suffocation, the other goes you. Therefore, with the person you are in pain, and after the person leaving, still in pain. Still in pain. This is the psychology of war. This is the starting point of war, which is distinct and different from the life of a seeker, which is distinct and different from the life of the seeker. Ivlo story edukku, ivlo discussion edukuna, we should drop all this and get into the life of a seeker. Adukku dhaan, yeah, not to be attached to this way of life. What is the life of a seeker? He also approaches the higher, he also approaches the master, he also asks the question, but there is a fundamental difference in the nature. Here the nature is one of violence, war, fight. The seeker's question is one of peace, thirst. Correct. It's thirst. It's search. It's thirst. Thirst for the higher. The thirst. Not fighting with the lower. Therefore you find the whole effect is completely different. 700 verses he has to explain. Still Arjuna remains unconvinced. That's the end of the discourse. Still Arjuna remains unconvinced. The Upanishads are not 700 verses, just 5 verses, 10 verses, 20 verses, that's all. And that answer itself is so convincing. Because of what? Because there is the seeking, there is the thirst. Thirst implies you have dropped to the lower. Thirst implies you have dropped to the lower. Fight implies you are still attached to the lower. Thirst implies you have dropped it. Fight implies you are still attached. And how much ever you try to win over, the end result will be the same. What is the end result? Loss. What is the end result? It's loss. It's loss. Loss of a glorious opportunity to get enlightened. That is the biggest loss. which doesn't make any difference to us, therefore it's okay. Yeah, that loss doesn't make any change. And value for enlightenment, value for liberation, thirst for liberation is suffocating from bondage. If bondage is very comfortable and I want to have one more bondage and I am thinking to adding one more bondage in that will not make any. Liberation is interesting only when you are suffocated by bondage. As long as the suffocation of bondage is not there, liberation will not inspire. And what is suffocation from bondage means? What is bondage? Bondage is an imagination. Bondage is an imagination. That's where you can go on imagining, because for imagination, who can stop you from imagining? Can anyone stop you from imagining? Because it happens. Yeah, it happens inside of you, and you go on feeding it. And you go on feeding it. Bondage is an imagination. What is that imagination? What is that imagination? Avladhan. It's mine. That's all it is. Bondage is nothing but it's mine. Mine, saying things as mine should suffocate you, not the problem that the other causes you. You say something as mine, and that person or that object causes a suffering, causes a pain. As a result of that pain, you want to fight. You are not fighting attachment. You are not fighting mineness. What are you fighting? What are you fighting? Again I repeat. You say, it's mine. The moment you say something as mine, it will cause pain. It will cause pain. Immediately it will not cause pain. For you to notice the pain takes a while. Or pain started from the beginning, you lack sensitivity to notice it. That's all. You can't say, oh, it comes only much later. No, on the point of varthukku munnadi, how can I avoid that? Yeah. Silence. Adu mudiyadhu. The very starting point of saying mine itself is pain, and the human being, you lack sensitivity you lack alertness, you lack awareness, you lack sensitivity to notice it, to see it. Therefore what happens? Blindfolded you continue. And then a time comes where it causes excruciating, piercing sorrow. What is excruciating, piercing sorrow? Makes you sleepless. Even in dreams it will come and haunt you. If something is coming and haunting you in your dream also, it means you are finished. Dream varlanna? Correct, sir. I don't have any dreams at all. It's still a worst state. It's still a worst state. It causes that. What is that piercing pain? What is that piercing pain? Fear of, adu one step munnadi. Why only to me? Fear of losing it. Adu munnadi one step irukku. Somebody taking away what is Your son walking away. Very close. Huh? Fear of losing your individuality. You know what is that piercing pain of attachment? What is it? The object or the being on which you put your heart and soul turns indifferent. Turns indifferent. That is the most painful moment. Out of that pain, you start fighting with that person. Fighting is to what? Why are you so indifferent? Start? Start recognizing, start attending, start catering. The starting point of pain is what? You put your heart and soul into something that turns indifferent. That turns indifferent. And that indifference you cannot handle. That indifference you cannot, and you get, see what is indifference means? What is indifference? What is indifference? Ignore. You will be ignored. And that stabs you. That stabs you. And then you cry, complain. What? How much I loved you. What all sacrifices I have done for you. Is this what I deserve in return? You understand that? Out of this, you can never blame yourself. You have to blame the other. That's the starting point of war. That's the visible part of war. The invisible part of war is what I explained what's happening inside. And then comes the visible part. What is the visible part? Then you start fighting to the point where the person whom you loved the most, you want to cause pain. Like this girl saying, just as I am making 20 calls and that boy is not answering my call. Sir, what should I do to make him call 20 times and I should avoid and he should experience that pain. Then only he will know how much I love him. What will he know? What will he know? What will he come to realize? Just as this girl has come to realize what? What this girl has come to realize now? What is this girl actually experiencing now? Pain. And she is saying what? Love has caused pain. The same love must cause pain to the other. In the name of love, you justify violence. In the name of love, you justify causing pain to others. That's the psychology of war. That's the war. This we do day in and day out. You keep doing. Day in and day out, you keep doing. The father complains, you ignored me, no? See, one day your son will ignore you, then you will also sympathize and say, correct sir. Not realizing what it is. See, if you had 1 ounce of intellect, you will tell that old man, why are you cursing your son? Otherwise, you want to cause pain, because the only way is what? Only way you know how to live life is through causing pain. The only way you know how to live life is to cause pain. When you talk, the intention is to cause pain. When you stay silent, again that silence is also to cause pain only. Yeah. The day you understand this, you drop this, you drop the day you understand this, you drop the violence, the violent nature. You drop the violent nature. That is called ahimsa. A plus himsa. Opposite of a plus himsa is just himsa. Yeah, just himsa. What is himsa? Romba himsa pa. What is himsa? Relishing the pain. Understand? Himsa is not causing. Himsa is relishing the pain. Himsa is relishing the pain. Whose pain? Others. Whose pain? Obviously not yours. Relishing the pain of others. You have to enjoy the pain. You have to enjoy that. Why do you need to enjoy that? That is, you do not know. Ego doesn't know any other way of enjoyment. Ego doesn't know any other way of enjoyment. Either it has to be violent to others or it has to be violent to one's own self. Either you have to pity yourself, harm yourself, hurt yourself and cry inside of yourself, or you have to hurt others but nevertheless, ego is that which is violent by nature. Violent in thought, violent in word, violent in action. Violent in thought. What does violent in thought means? Is there dharma at all in this world, sir? Is there righteousness at all in this world? Abdina, what does it mean? What are you actually asking? Why is that man not yet suffering? Why is that man not yet suffering? Instead of saying that, you ask very holy question. What is a very holy question? Is there dharma at all in life? Is there righteousness at all in life? God His gods are sleeping. Why? Because that man is still happy. That man must suffer. That man must suffer. And why is he happy? Therefore, dharma means what? Dharma means suffering. That's where now comes the crux. Now carefully follow. Ego has a deep fondness to suffering. Ego has a deep fondness, deep bondage with suffering. You look at your own self or you look at others. When they talk about their blissful moments of life and their painful moments of life, they will never say the intensity with which they talk about the blissful moments, the intensity with which they talk about the sad moments, painful moments. What do they actually relish? The suffering moments only. Because suffering is seen as something, ego has an affinity to suffering. That's where Krishna comes in, completely different, dancing, playing a flute, saying suffering means it is ignorance. Otherwise, suffering is the way in which you have a deep down affinity to suffering. Example, You all had your blissful moments in life. You all had your painful moments also in life. See, the child causes blissful moments, the child causes painful moments also. Correct? You have a child or children. It causes blissful moments and it causes painful moments. What do you remember more? School kanuche, 10th exam made 12th exam made, took them to the hospital. Now I am relieved. Now I am relieved. You cannot say the blissful. You cannot talk about the blissful moments. What is the blissful moments? What is the blissful moments? With so much of pain and agony and sorrow, and I come, and the child there smiles at me, and that smile took away everything. For that one smile, it's worth suffering the entire. You can never say that. You can never weigh down the blissful moments more. You have to talk about. Another example. Whenever you talk about your achievements in life, you have to say how much you suffered to get that. How much you cannot say, in spite of my foolishness and ignorance and inaction, God blessed me with that. You cannot say. You have to say what? Sir, how much I suffered. Street light I studied. Under the water I lived. And now all this is suffering. When you have such a deep-rooted affinity to suffering, how can you get rid of it? How can you? Because the attraction is always towards suffering. The only time you start experiencing bliss is when you turn spiritual. It's not a suffering. It is the starting point is becoming blissful. If this is also a suffering now, you have not yet taken the U-turn as yet. That's why this also looks adalla suffering na idu the spiritual growth is romba tapas sir. Very difficult. It means you have not yet taken the U-turn. Because the day you take the U-turn, you understand all this is so lower in nature. Why will I want to be associated with it? And the pain goes up. The pain goes up. Krishna is there. 700 verses telling Arjuna to leave the affinity to suffering. Let's have a contempt for suffering. You should not glorify suffering. You must have a contempt for suffering. Then only you will turn blissful. If you glorify poverty, you can never get out of it. Do you follow what I am saying? See, if you glorify poverty, worst thing is you sanctify poverty. If you sanctify sorrow, you can never get out of it, because you have sanctified it. You have made it look so holy, so divine. You must have a contempt for it. The day you develop contempt for it, you will learn. Unless you develop a contempt for poverty, how can you get out of it? Similarly, unless you develop a contempt for sorrow, instead of that, we go on making it appear more and more holy, sanctifying it. And there is a religious sanction for for suffering. You suffer now, tomorrow you will be happy. All suffering you do now, so that you don't understand the law of karma. You sow the seed of sorrow, you reap the tree of sorrow. You sow the seed of discontentment, you reap the tree of discontentment. It's a law of karma. It's a law of cause and effect. You might agree, you might not agree. You might accept, you might not accept. But the law doesn't change. It can never happen where you sow pain and sorrow now and you reap joy and happiness later. It never happens. It never happens. So, seeds of contentment now, so that you reap contentment later. The poorest way of living life is this. The only way you know how to evolve is through discontentment. All motivation, all drive, all thing comes from a deep sense of you are discontented not having it. You are discontented. It is discontentment that drives action, growth. The moment there is a contentment, what stops? Action stops. Therefore, if you have to act, what is needed? What is needed? Discontentment. And that action which is born out of discontentment will breed more discontentment. Vedanta comes and says, Krishna comes and says, Upanishad comes and says, start acting out of contentment. Learn how to act out of contentment. Growth automatically happens. You don't have to worry about growing. Growth automatically happens because when your actions are out of contentment, the actions are so efficient, the actions are so powerful, the actions are so dynamic, growth happens all by itself. What does growth means? Spiritual growth means stability of the mind. That's a definition. That's a definition. Spiritual growth means stability of the mind. That's all. Unstable mind means lack of growth. A discontented person can never be stable. He can never be stable. If we say be stable, be contented, na habada. Rest. Start doing all useless actions. Rest is nothing but a useless action. Again I repeat. Learn to grow out of contentment. Learn to start acting out of contentment. If discontentment were to, that's where science can never agree to philosophy, because science will say, your logic will say, discontentment illana, how there will be growth? How there will be growth? If we were all contented with bullock carts, no carts, no sir. So therefore, discontentment only causes growth, no, correct. Discontentment doesn't cause growth. Discontentment, out of discontentment, you will create a new set of action, eventually resulting in discontentment. That's where from bullock cart to cars can give contentment. Now today we should be contented, no? From cars to something else. ஒரே டிராஃபிக் ஜாமா இருக்கு சார் இல்லையா? ஹெலிகாப்டர் வந்துட்டா நல்லா இருக்கும்ல. Today straight you can go out of your, from your rooftop, you go, and another rooftop you land. One day you will do that also. More accidents will happen because more chaos, no? Because you will not the only one who will be flying. The whole world will be flying, no? The problem is what? You only want to fly and all others must. That's all. You will want to fly and all others must. குதிரை வண்டியில போகணுமா? நடந்து போகணும். Violence. It makes you violent. That's all. This attitude, this notion makes you violent. And both Kauravas and Pandavas are victim of this notion. Therefore, both have caused this war. Therefore, at the end of the war, both suffers, both loses. Both, if Pandavas are good now, why should they lose? All their side must be strong and intact, and Kauravas alone should have lost. But actually, what you see? The 19th day and the 20th day is the pathetic scene. War is over. 19th day because war is 18 days. The 19th day, 20th day is the pathetic scene because millions of dead bodies lying in front of your eyes and everybody doing funeral for doing funeral to what? Funeral to what? To their own near and a product of their attachment. And Krishna is the only man laughing. So they went and asked, why are you laughing? He said, I'm how much I cried saying, don't fight. None of you listen. And you want me also to come and join the war, and I also joined. Why are you crying? Now. And then you want to curse Krishna for and then they cursed Krishna for what? Misplaced. What did he do? Who caused the war? Krishna didn't cause the war. Who caused it? Say both. Both caused it. Don't say only Kauravas. Both caused it. How do you know? Because the result is the losses were equal on both sides. It means what? Somewhere both are guilty of the same mistake. What is the mistake? What is the mistake? Violence. What is violence? Wishing, relishing, causing pain. This is violence. Sometimes you might not wish, but you relish. You might not wish, but you relish. What is relishing? Enjoying the pain of. So what is violence? Either causing or wishing or relishing. All three is there combined. All three are there combined. Therefore, you will end up creating war. Wherever you go, you will end up creating a war. And how do you create a war? You have to whip yourself into a frenzy. Then only the war will start. You have to whip yourself into a frenzy. Verses 13 to 19 is just a frenzy. That's all. Just a frenzy. What is that frenzy? Drums and conches and everything which which makes you hysterical. You have to become hysterical. Yeah. You have to become hysterical. Yeah. That's why wherever you want to create a frenzy, you start drumming. You start drumming. Then only the hysteria, slower, it will start and reaches its climax when? After reaches its climax when? Self-destruction. Don't say destroying others, because you have no capacity to destroy another. You have all the capacity only to destroy yourself. You are only capacitated to destroy yourself. You are only capacitated to help yourself. You can neither help another or destroy another. Both is not possible. If you can harm now, you can help also. No. If you can help now, you can harm. No. You understand? But the law of life says you can neither do both. But then you can do one thing. What? You can help yourself, or you can destroy yourself. You can destroy, and to destroy yourself, you have to whip up the frenzy. How do you whip up the frenzy? The conches, the kettles, the drums, the one man having one horns. Signaling what? Signaling? Let us all start killing each other, all of them. Clear? What are they signaling? They are not saying let us stop peace and let us say why fight and kill. They are signaling for what? Let us kill each other. Let us fight with each other. 13 to 19. Quickly we will go through the verses. And now there is no deeper. One man has one conch, one indication. That's all. Verses 13 to 19. Padi. Conches, kettle drums, tabors, drums, cow horns blared forth quite suddenly, and that noise was tumultuous. Means the frenzy has started. The war had, for all practical reasons, the war had started, because they are all ready. Very significant. Bhishma blows the conch first. Very, very significant. Who starts the conch first? Who gives the first signal? Bhishma. Symbolic of the Kaurava. Symbolic of the Kauravas side. He blows, because somebody has to start. No. Yeah. It's like a chess game. Clear. White piece, black piece. Someone has to make the first move. And Bhishma made the first move. And very symbolic, if that man Bhishma were to blow the conch, because the most respected man, the most respectful man, the man who has no interest in what they are fighting for, is initiating the fight. He has no interest in what they are fighting for, because he is the one who gave it up, and he is the one who is Yeah, very symbolic is that the fellow who has nothing to do with all this initiating. The moment he started, the entire Kaurava camp started there. They started the conches, the kettle drums, what all? I don't know what all they were blowing. Immediately as a response, Krishna blows. Krishna and Arjuna. Only two wonderful people there. From the Kaurava side, Bhishma starts. From the Pandava side, Krishna starts. And both have nothing to do with it. They have nothing to do with it. Even then nobody wakes up. Even then they say, hey, wait, why are you? We should be starting. Verse number 14. Then seated in a magnificent chariot, yoked to white horses, Madhava and Pandava also blew their divine conches. Only difference is what? Since Krishna is on their side, their conches become divine. That conches were ordinary conches, not this conches is divine. Wonderful is Krishna. He says, I respond. That's all. You start something, I respond. From me, I don't initiate anything. He's like a mirror. That's all. You blow the conch, I will respond. From his side, what he will do? He would have went back quietly and started. He would have continued his dance. Halfway through the dance, he came to fight. What he would have done? He would have gone back and started dancing all over. Seated in their chariot, Krishna and Arjuna. Shweta means white horses. And Arjuna's chariot is the chariot of Arjuna itself is so wonderful because the horses are divine, the chariot is divine, the charioteer is divine, the flag is divine, except Arjuna who is ignorant. Correct, no? See, it's very symbolic. Everything about the chariot is so divine, except that one person. 4 horses. Yes, numbers are 4 horses. Kathopanishad says 5 horses. It's symbolic taken from Kathopanishad. The chariot is the metaphor from the Kathopanishad. Everything is so good about this chariot. The horses were given by the celestial king. The conch were given by fire god. Everything was. And who's in that flag? Arjuna's chariot had a flag, no? Maruti, the monkey god. He is there as the lion. So much of divine sitting in that divine thing. Arjuna is going to blabber. That's what you should remember. Why so much of description for this chariot? In that atmosphere of soaked in divinity, Arjuna is going to start what? Arjuna is going to start Huh? Arjuna is going to start crying. Arjuna is going to start crying. What is the need to cry in life? There is no need to cry. There is no need to cry in life, because everything around you is divine, and that divine says, you are protected by me. Why are you crying? Arjuna starts crying. Yeah, Krishna, the charioteer, the divine this, divine that, everything so divine. End result is what? Arjuna saying, let us also give up here. No, Bhishma has given up. Why can't we emulate Bhishma? Let them enjoy the kingdom. Why cause pain? He can't become that charitable. He has to sit and he has to do what? He has to cry. We don't outgrow our childhood. We don't outgrow our childhood. Body gets aged, but mentally we are stuck in that. The first few months of the life, the human child does only one thing. For everything, it does only one. What? Cry. For everything, it cry. And we don't outgrow that. Even now, even though with everything around, we still continue to do what? Cry. They say cry baby, no? Cry baby. For everything it knows only one thing, what? To cry. Crying implies what? Moaning, groaning, complaining, helplessness, victim. That's crying. Crying implies victim, helplessness. You are dependent. You are dependent. The ant will be biting and the child will not know how to. Correct, no? The ant will bite and the child doesn't know how to remove it. It knows only one thing, what? Right. And the mother comes and removes it. That's the first and last lesson you learn in life, and then you don't learn anything. From that time onwards you will cry and wait for someone to come and remove the ant. You will cry and someone has to come and remove the ant, and that someone will come and remove. Divine will come and remove. As soon as he removes, you take and put it back on you. That's what we don't understand. The day you understand this, you will stop doing it. It's not that divine has left you. It's not that divine has forsaken you. It comes and removes. Even before it is completely removed, you ask and take and put it back. Again you will cry. Again it will be removed. Again you will. Infinite is this fight going on. Clear? How many times you will do it? And you go on doing it. That is Arjuna. Remember that. Magnificent chariot. Everything about that chariot is divine. And you know that the chariot, inconquerable. The man in the chariot can never be won, can never be conquered. Sitting in the chariot, that man is crying. That man is crying. Crying for what? Crying for what? Because all that he has claimed as his is ready to die right in front of his eyes. That's all. All the attachments are going to go right in front of his. That's the war. That 18-day war, if you see, both sides it's balanced out so well. If one attachment from the Kaurava side goes na, one attachment from the Pandava side will go. It's so balanced out, and finally nothing. Finally, when they thought, Abada, we have conquered. Ashwatthama comes in the night and destroys, slaughters everybody, so that he makes sure the war is balanced actually. Yeah, balanced. 15, 16, 17, the names of the conches. The names of the conches.
Panchajanyam Rishikeshaha Devadattam Dhananjaya Paundram Tasmau Mahashankam Bhishmakarma Vrikodara.
Hrishikesha blew the Panchajanya, Dhananjaya, the Devadatta, and Vrikodara, Poundra. Name of the Panchajanya, named after a demon who Krishna killed. That's all. Devadatta is the name of the conch which Arjuna uses, gifted by Indra. Vrikodara, terrible deed. Vrikodara is another name for Bhima. What is his conch called? Poundra. Poundra means it can hear over a long distance. Yeah. Man of terrible deeds. Because he is a huge, he is a very huge man. Only he can have the stamina to blow that conch, where the sound can travel far away. 16.
Ananta Vijayam Raja Kunti Putro Yudhishthiraha Nakula Sahadevascha Sugoshamani Pushpakau. King Yudhishthira, the son of Kunti, Ananta Vijaya, and Nakula and Sahadeva, Sugosha and Manipushpaka. The names of the conches. Raja Yudhishthira, he calls. Sanjaya addresses Yudhishthira is not yet a king. He's still the man who is without a kingdom, and still Sanjaya says King Yudhishthira. What he blew? Ananta Vijaya, Sugosha, Mani, Pushpaka. Vijaya, victory. Ananta, always victorious. That's why he is called Dharmaraja. Always victorious. His conch is called Ananta Vijaya. Sugosha, Mani, Pushpaka. One name, that's all. Literally has no deeper philosophical significance. But as a whole, the conches signifies something, which is what I already explained. On the whole, conches signifies something, and every conch has its own story behind it. Every conch has its own story behind it, and we are not going to go into the stories alla. அப்புறம் ஹரிகதா மாதிரி ஆயிடும். அப்புறம் ஹரிகதா மாதிரி ஆயிடும். அப்புறம் then next week we have to bring tabla, மிருதங்கம், and then on third week 3 fellows will start dancing also. He has no literal. There is a story behind all that. 17 and 18 read together. Send the person. Kashyascha parameshvasaha Shikhandi cha maharataha Shrishtadyumno viratascha Satyakischa parajitaha Draupado Draupadeyascha Sarvashastra siddhipate
सौभद्रश्च महाबाहुः शङ्खदध्नो पृथक्
and Kashya, the king of Kashi, an excellent archer, and Shikandi, a Maharatha, a great chariot warrior, Drishtadyumna, Virata, Sati, all great warriors in the Pandavas side. O Lord of Earth. Lord of Earth refers to Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra, Drupada, and the sons of Draupadi, the 5 sons of Draupadi, and the mighty armed son of Subhadra. Who is that mighty armed son of Subhadra? Abhimanyu. All blew their respective conches. Kauravas have blown their conches. Said, start. Pandava said, they are giving a fitting. They are giving a fitting reply. They are giving a fitting response, saying that we are also ready. 19.
Saghoshodharashtrana hridayani pradarayat nabhascha prathivim chaiva umulobhyamudanayan.
That tumultuous sound. What is that sound? That sound. Both the armies are blowing their tops out. Rent the hearts of Dhritarashtra's host and made the earth and sky reverberate. Heard that sound, that Dhritarashtra's host means the Kauravas started experiencing fear, because the response is from divine. The response is from the divine, and selfishness is afraid of the selfishness always has to be afraid of the higher. Now the stage is set for the war. Sanjaya is indicatively saying, what? Dhritarashtra, at least even now you can stop it. Even now you can stop it. Even now you can stop it. Because it's useless getting into a war. It's not that you are afraid of war. It's not that you are fear of dying. It's not that you avoid war because of the fear of death. It's not because of the fear of death you avoid the war. You avoid war. Why? You want to avoid war. Why? The wise one wants to avoid war. Why? He is so sensitive that he can't cause pain to others. That's all. That's why he is still trying. What? Let us avoid this war. Let us avoid this war. Because he is so sensitive not to cause pain. Not to cause pain to himself and others. If you are causing pain to yourself, invariably you have to cause pain to the other. If you cause pain to others, invariably you will end up paining. Both goes hand in hand. You can't have one and not the other. Both will go. Therefore, what's happening now? The sound produced by the conches struck terror in the hearts of the Kauravas and warriors in their side. In this backdrop, a very long topic. Arjuna is going to start his wisdom. Arjuna is going to start his discourse.